And welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. It's Friday. Happy Friday to you, baby. Can't wait for this program. I've looked forward to it for a long time. Adam Healey, Interim Executive Director of the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau, is going to join us, ladies and gentlemen, right here on the I Love CVille Show to talk about the future of Charlottesville, Virginia. We have an advertising campaign in the works that without question will dictate the pace and tempo of how the regional, the Mid-Atlantic, the Triangle, North Carolina, anywhere in the Mid-Atlantic will see Charlottesville, Virginia. Anywhere from a national stage will see Charlottesville, Virginia. You may see this campaign in Chicago. You may see this campaign in New York City. You may see this campaign in Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, if you love Charlottesville like I love Charlottesville, please realize how important this advertising campaign is. If you live in Central Virginia, Albemarle County, Louisa County, Orange County, Nelson County, Greene County, Fluvanna County, this campaign will impact the value of your most prized possession, your home. It's facts, folks. It's facts. Before we go to the two-shot, and before we welcome Adam Healey to the show, let's thank the fantastic sponsors of this program. First, I want to start with Sean and Roxanne Simmons. About 28 years ago, a husband and wife tandem took a beat-up Honda Civic, they took some sweat equity and a dream, and they have built a global freaking business. Sean and Roxanne Simmons at Greenberry's Coffee you can find in Japan, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, soon to open in Portland, Oregon. Sean and Roxanne Simmons have a coffee shop in Washington, D.C. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Greenberry's Coffee started at the McIntyre Office Park, their roasting facility, and in Barracks Road Shopping Center, their first coffee shop ever. It's the kind of entrepreneurial journey that really gets me jacked right here on the I Love CVille Show. I also want to give some big-time props to Scotty Wagner, Dr. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. You know that "Who's Got Your Back" tagline? It originated right here at I Love CVille. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. This gentleman is changing lives and improving the quality of life for people across Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Adam Healey, the two-shot, Judah Wickower. Judah Wickower making us look good behind the board. You have a number of people on the stream right now. I see you, Travis Wilburn. I see you, Keely Kitchens. I see you, Charlie Ann, Corbett Snow, Lauren Linsky, Patty Bowden, Cameron Wells Marsh. We can spend 30 minutes talking about the folks here. Before we do, I'm going to give the microphone and the show to you. Who is Adam Healey, the man? Who is Adam Healey, the entrepreneur? Who is Adam Healey, the Charlottesvillian?
Thanks, Jerry. Well, I appreciate you having me on the show. We figured out earlier that the secret to your success is 40 ounces of coffee 3 times a day.
Getty, 120 ounces of coffee a day, baby.
Excellent, excellent. So we've got a good, I think, show ahead of us. So I'm happy to be here. I would say, first and foremost, describing who I am as a human, I've called Charlottesville home for over 20 years. Off and on, it's a community that I love. I first came here in 1992 for school for the University of Virginia. Proud graduate of McIntyre School of Commerce at UVA. And I found myself back here in 2003 to attend Darden Business School. And except for a couple of journeys elsewhere, one to New York and one to Boulder, Colorado, I've lived here ever since. So Charlottesville is my home. It's an amazing place. It's an amazing community. And I care deeply about it. And I care deeply about the people here.
You know, and I know that because of your success, you exited and helped me here. Was it hotel? What was the name of the business?
So in addition to being a citizen of Charlottesville, I would consider myself an entrepreneur.
Right. Definitely you are.
I've started 3 companies in my life. 2 of them have been based in Charlottesville. The first one was Hotelicopter,
yes,
which was a hotel search engine.
And you exited.
And we started that in 2006. I started with a classmate of mine from Darden, Charles Seilheimer. We were the co-founders of the business. We grew that business here, and 5 years later, we were able to successfully sell it to a company called Roomkey, which is made up of the 6 largest hotel chains in the world, and they still have their offices here in Charlottesville. I'm not quite sure how many people are employed, but I like to think of that as a success story. And the second company is Bard and Blue,
sure,
which I started in 2011. And that was a wedding website.
An epicenter.
Really a platform for people planning, couples planning their weddings, and wedding vendors, venues, photographers, florists, caterers. Really, there's so many different moving parts that go into putting a wedding together. And I thought that that would be a great business to have and found here in Charlottesville as well. That was less of a success financially, which is really one of the main metrics you look at to evaluate these things. And we don't have to go into the details, but the good news is that the company was sold to Zola, which is based in New York, and they took over the offices, which are just down the street here, actually, on Market Street. And so they now employ upwards of 20 people here in Charlottesville as well as a second office for Zola, which is a wedding registry business, which is over $130 million of venture capital investment behind it. So that was the outcome there.
Where I'm going with this is you could live anywhere you want. I'm going to heap a little praise on you here. You are successful. You have vision. You're an entrepreneur. You have money. You do not have to live in Charlottesville. You choose to live in Charlottesville. Sarah Hill Buczynski says people might leave, but they always come back. Aaron Richardson, city editor of the Daily Progress, watching the show right now. I see you, Aaron, and thank you for joining us. Amy Moore, thank you for joining us. Like the stream and share the stream so we can spotlight what Adam Healey and the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau are doing to help dictate the pace and tempo of the future of Charlottesville, Virginia. Reporters literally calling me on my phone right now. I'm going to throw this to you and not interrupt. Well, I might interrupt you again. But I'm going to throw this to you here. You could live anywhere. You live in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
What is it about Charlottesville you love?
I think in a word, it's community. It absolutely is an incredible community. And frankly, this community has been put under quite a bit of strain in the last few years. I remember walking the downtown mall the day and the week after the events of August 12th, 2017. And it was incredible because people were walking around hugging each other and commiserating with each other. And what we saw was an incredibly tragic event happened on August 12th, 2017. And at the same time, I think that our community showed its resilience in the face of that tragedy and continues to do so. And certainly there's a lot more healing that needs to take place, and this community needs to continue to come together and really remember, who we are and what we stand for.
Well said. Let's turn that into a sizzle reel. I think that's a very good sizzle reel, highlight reel that we can pull because that gives perspective of Adam's passion for Charlottesville. And he is passionate about Charlottesville. He's caught some flack for maybe the initial advertising campaign. We'll get into that nitty-gritty. I think maybe some of the flack fair, maybe some of the flack, the majority of the flack unfair. I'm going to get you back there. Let's get straight to the nitty-gritty. The CACVB, you're the interim director. Did you just have the contract renewed?
Yeah, so I was asked in June of 2018, last year, to step in as the interim executive director for the CACVB. And I said yes because I felt like it was a role that I could play well in this incredibly important time of transition. And that was basically the last official act of the former board of the CACVB was to sign me up for a 4-month consulting agreement to basically manage the transition from the old board to the new board. And in October of last year, they asked to renew my contract an additional 6 months, which I did. And I really see it as a sense of duty to ensure that we position ourselves as a community in the best possible way to be successful. Because you're right, Jerry, you and I both care deeply about this community. It's clear that you care about it, and I care deeply as well. And I think that it's important that we get this right. There are a lot of people, and there are a lot of businesses and a lot of organizations that rely on the success of the tourism industry here. And so, I'd love to dive into that into more detail.
Absolutely. We are going to dive into it. Bobby Castine, thank you for joining us. Like the stream, share the stream. Let's get the spotlight on Charlottesville, a positive spotlight. I consider myself a conscious capitalist or a social entrepreneur. Everyone's like, Jerry, you have these businesses you run. I'm not a businessman. I'm a social entrepreneur. I run a for-profit business that has a mission of leaving Charlottesville in a better spot. That's the entire concept of what we do. I wake up each day. How can I keep my staff fed? And how can I make Charlottesville better? I think there's a lot of similarities with what we do. You are now in more of a bureaucratic position. The CACVB has elected officials, elected politicians on the board. Give us some insight into the dynamic of the CACVB. I understand you have to work with these people. Sure. So there's certain things you can say, certain things you can't say. I will try to press you a little bit here. One of the things I really want to press you on is because you understand the need for nimbleness and the need to pivot and the need to act quickly because you're an entrepreneur. That's how successful entrepreneurs run their business. They adapt to marketplace conditions. They try to take chances because they try to anticipate where the market's going. Now the CACVB, I'm going to say, may be heavy in its staffing. It maybe have, I'm going to say it, might have too many hens in the hen house. Okay? You're not saying it, I'm saying it. Okay? What is the dynamic like at the CACVB? We'll start open-ended.
Sure. So to just give a little history, the local governments of the City Council, the Charlottesville City Council, and the Albemarle Supervisory Board requested that legislation be passed at the state level to actually allow for elected officials to sit on the tourism board, and that passed at the end of our last year. We are actually the only Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're the only tourism bureau in Virginia that has elected officials on its board. So that's fact number one. Fact number two is I came in and the first thing I wanted to do is get a sense of, what is the industry, how do other tourism bureaus that are successful operate, basically? And so what we call that is a best practices analysis. And the first thing was to develop a consensus of 5 markets that we would look at as basically our peer markets from a tourism perspective. And we identified Asheville, North Carolina.
No brainer.
Chapel Hill, North Carolina, another college town. Boulder, Colorado. And we identified Sonoma County, California, which is a wine market. And then, of course, Charleston, South Carolina, one of the most successful tourism markets in the country, in the world, actually. And I looked at how those, we'll start with governance, which is what we're talking about, governance, right? You have to make sure that you have the right people sitting at the table to make decisions. I think it's really important that we understand that the CACVB is an economic organization. It is focused on an economic mission, purely to drive the tourism and hospitality industry. So we're talking about people coming here to visit Charlottesville that don't live here. They stay in hotels or Airbnbs. They eat in our restaurants. They go to our destinations. They go to Monticello. They go to the University of Virginia. And they go to our vineyards. We have 35 incredible vineyards in the area. They might come to a show. They might come to a music festival. So really, we're focused on attracting as many of those people to Charlottesville and Albemarle County as we can. So we have an economic mission, and it's to drive tourism and hospitality to the region. So what type of people should be sitting around the table making big decisions when it comes to tourism? Well, I don't think it's too far a stretch to say, well, maybe we should have tourism industry professionals.
Seems like a no-brainer, dude.
So people whose livelihood and whose businesses and organizations' livelihood depend on tourism, those are the right people to have around the table. So when you look at the makeup of boards in Asheville, North Carolina, for example, Asheville has an 11-person board. 9 of those 11 members are tourism industry professionals. 2 of them are elected officials. And those 2 elected officials are actually non-voting members. Everyone else is a voting member. Charleston, South Carolina, same dynamic. In fact, if you look at all of these markets, Sonoma has a majority of industry representation. Boulder, Colorado has a majority of industry representation. So now when I come in and I look at the board makeup for Charlottesville and Albemarle, CACVB, I see it's reversed. And we actually have like 80% of our members are either elected or government officials. What our goal is to have a diversity and an inclusive group of people sitting around the table who understand tourism and hospitality and whose livelihoods and whose organizations and businesses' livelihoods depend on that. So one of the first things we did is I pushed for an amendment to the joint operating agreement to add more tourism industry representation. When we talk about the concern that the board is getting too big, frankly, it's easier to make the board bigger and add tourism industry professionals than to try and tell elected or government officials, you know what, would you mind exiting stage right? And the truth is that there's a lot of value that the elected officials and the government officials, we have the heads of economic development for Charlottesville, Chris Engel, fantastic, and Roger Johnson for the county, fantastic. You want those people at the table. We also have the city manager, Mike Murphy. We have the county executive, Jeff Richardson. And now we have 2 elected officials from the city. We have Kathy Galvin and Mike Signer on the board. And we have 2 elected officials from the county. We have Ann Malik and Diantha McKeel. And then we have Ann Taylor, who runs Monticello, that's Thomas Jefferson Foundation, which runs Monticello. So obviously an incredibly important destination, wonderful person. We now have Elizabeth Cromwell, who's the new president of the Greater Charlottesville Chamber of Commerce. She sits on the board. And we have Pace Lachte, who represents the University of Virginia.
Good memory.
Yeah, who's obviously important as well because the university is so critical. But what my goal was is to bring on some more industry representation. We also have 2 other industry folks. The only really 2 that are pure, I would say, industry folks. We have Jennifer Mayo from the Omni Hotel. She's run sales and marketing for them. She's also wonderful. And she can put on the hat of, I'm a hotelier. Our livelihood, our business's livelihood depends on people coming here. And we have George Hodson, who is he's the CEO of Veritas Vineyards, but probably more relevant to his seat on the board, he runs the Monticello Wine Trail, which represents 30 plus vineyards in Charlottesville and Albemarle County.
Let's put governance screen slide 1 on so we can introduce the people to, that Adam's talking about. We're going to put this slide on so people can see it, and you can continue offering perspective here on this dynamic. Thank you, Judah.
Great. So first goal here from a governance perspective was we feel a little overweighted on the government side and a little underrepresented in terms of arts, in terms of transportation, in terms of homestays, in terms of other destinations and activities and attractions that people might stay in terms of the restaurant industry, right? So there's a lot in terms of the outdoor industry here. So, in an ideal world, we would have a representative on the board that would kind of represent each of those major buckets because that would give us a more inclusive group of people to be talking about the important matters that relate to tourism and hospitality. So what we did do is we were able to get 2 more representatives from the tourism industry added to, well, I should say, I shouldn't get ahead of myself. 2 days ago, the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors approved an amendment to the joint operating agreement between the city and the county, which adds 2 new tourism industry representatives to the board and makes the Charlottesville Chamber of Commerce seat and the Thomas Jefferson Foundation seat full voting members. And it also makes those 2 alternate elected officials full voting members. So that's a win, I think. We are adding more industry representation to the board. One of those 2 seats will be focused on the arts and programming in the arts, and the second seat will be focused on just a general seat that someone can who represents the industry.
Judah, let's get Adam's handsome face back on screen. We'll continue to flash these slides back on screen and off. Give me about 15 seconds for each slide on screen. I'm going to ask you a tough question. Okay. Elected officials. How are they working with tourism experts?
Yeah.
I get while you're the interim director. Okay. You're an entrepreneur. You have vision. You love Charlottesville. Bardo and Blue, in some ways, was an epicenter for driving economic growth to Central Virginia.
Absolutely.
Because you're featuring the vendors and asking folks to patronize these vendors and driving economic growth.
Absolutely.
Elected officials, though. Why are elected officials on this board when no other municipality? You just told me no other one has voting elected officials making decisions, right? Did you just say that?
True.
Why are they on here? Why do they have voting rights?
So the first thing I would say is I have a lot of respect for our elected officials. They do an incredible amount of work for not much return.
Yeah, 18,000 if you're a city councilor, 20,000 if you're the mayor.
And so it's not just even the financial return that they're not necessarily getting, but I don't know how often people go up to Kathy Galvin or Ann Malik and pat them on the back and say thank you, and I hope that they do. So I have a lot of respect for public service and our elected officials. That being said, the challenge with an elected official sitting on our board as a full voting member, and in our case, really driving the majority of influence on the board, is that they are looking through the world in a different lens, right? So they are looking at the world through a different lens than, say, a purely economic lens. And there are other priorities that the city and the county might have. You have the city council in Charlottesville, 5 city council members oversee a budget of $165 million. You have 6 Albemarle County officials that sit on the Albemarle Supervisory Board that oversee a budget of $460 million. And now we have a board of 15 elected officials from both the city and the county and the government officials that oversees a $1.8 million budget. So if you think about that, it does seem like we might be a little bit heavily skewed towards. Now, here's the benefit of having the folks on the board from the government, from both the city and the county. If you want to do big things, we have the opportunity. We have the decision makers at the table. I mean, we have all the top decision makers from the city and the county at the table.
Sure.
Well, my first goal is governance, so let's get more industry representation. So that's why it was increasing the size of the board, but let's get more industry folks at the table. Let's listen to what they have to say. The second thing, though, to talk about is really funding, okay? And the fact is $1.8 million isn't a lot of money.
No.
Especially when you look at how we're spending that, only 60% of that goes to marketing. And if you think about that 60%, only another fraction of that is actually going to ad spend. So you're talking about marketing a destination as incredible as Charlottesville and Albemarle are. Really a world-class destination. There's no reason that we shouldn't be the Asheville of Virginia. There's absolutely no reason.
Totally agree.
So what's Asheville's marketing budget? What's Asheville's budget? They have an $18 million budget.
Get out of town.
They have a 10x size of the budget that we do. And the fact is, we could have the same budget if we wanted to. We need elected officials to say so.
Why aren't they?
So how does it work?
Yeah.
We currently collect transient occupancy tax for any visitor that comes to Charlottesville that stays, or Albemarle County that stays in a hotel. They pay a tax of 5% if they're in the county and 7% if they're in the city. About 20% of those total funds go to fund the entirety of the CACVB budget. So the $1.8 million I referred to, which is our budget for 2018, and it'll be slightly larger this year, comes entirely from visitors staying in hotels. So the concept that this is taxpayer money, it's not really taxpayer money.
Well, in some ways, that money could be allocated to other items in Charlottesville.
And it does.
Yeah.
So the 20% goes back into tourism, and the 80% goes back into the general funds of both the city budget and the county budget. So you're talking about last year, $9 million of TOT collected, let's say total. 1.8 stayed in tourism, and the rest went back to the general funds. So you're talking about roughly $7 million in total. Of a combined budget, if you add the 460 and the 165 together, $630 million, we're talking about, hey, why don't we keep that $7 million out of the $660 million? Why don't we keep it in tourism? That's exactly what happens in Asheville, North Carolina. So they levy a TOT, a transient occupancy tax in North Carolina, and they keep 100% of it in tourism. Same exact thing happens in Charleston, South Carolina. And it's no coincidence that those are the most successful tourism markets in their states.
Right.
So if Charlottesville wants to be the epicenter of tourism in Virginia, it is the crown jewel of Virginia. Can we agree?
I think that's safe to say.
It's the crown jewel
It's
of
not
Virginia.
Nova.
No, it's not. And it's not Roanoke, and it's not Lynchburg, and it's not Virginia Beach. You know, it's a special place. If we want to show that we are prioritizing tourism and hospitality, there's nothing that we can do more than keep all that money in tourism. And so my second major priority One is governance, the second is budget. And I would like to see the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau, through the joint operating agreement between the city and the county, keep 100% of the transient occupancy tax in tourism, exactly the same thing that Asheville, North Carolina does and Charleston, South Carolina.
I like everything you just said there. Ray Cadell says this is a critical conversation today. Ray Cadell is an entrepreneur, real estate agent who also runs one of the largest music booking businesses in Charlottesville, Virginia. Judah, you're working on those shots well back there, right? Okay. Cameron Childress, thank you for joining us. Sam King, thank you for joining us. Mark Wogman, thank you for joining us. Charlottesville City Council candidate Michael Payne, thank you for joining us here on the show. Let's cue up when you have convenience, and we'll keep it up for 15 seconds, the mission slide for the CACVB.
Great.
So this is slide 2, Judah, that we'll have on screen. Talk to me about the mission, Adam.
Yeah. So as I said, the number one thing to keep in mind is that we have an economic mission, and our economic mission is high level to drive more tourism and hospitality to Charlottesville and Albemarle County. And it is an agreement between the city and the county that has formed the CACVB. So it's really both of those organizations that we're focused on supporting equally. And specifically, what do? Right? We basically do 3 things. The first bucket is what I would call marketing, advertising, public relations.
Building a brand.
Building a brand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're very familiar with that,
Sure.
right? So we have to own the Charlottesville brand, and it has to be positive. And so in relation to that subject, when I came on the scene mid last year, I found out that we really didn't have any public relations resources.
It's crazy.
At all.
That's freaking crazy.
And I think that it's shown because of the events starting in August 12th of 2017.
Undoubtedly.
And until, since then, it's kind of clear that we don't have a lot of PR direction, and we're not being proactive about combating some of the negative and frankly unfair and inaccurate press that's been out there about
And you know why I think that is I think for so long, and James Watson, who's a friend of the show, a friend of Charlottesville, he says, wow, I am learning a lot from this. Asheville and Charleston have some things figured out in terms of tourism investment. No wonder they are attracting thousands of visitors all the time for tourism. I mean, he's totally right. James and Adam's given us a great breakdown here. I think Charlottesville for so long has relied, and we've rested on our laurels. We've gotten fat and happy because the regional and national press have dubbed us the happiest city in America for so long that we didn't have to have a PR, branding, or advertising campaign. Right. All we had to do was say, hey, New York Times just called us the happiest city in America. Right. USA Today just called us the happiest city in America. We coasted. Yeah. And I understand why we coasted, because putting strategies and campaigns together requires a tremendous amount of human capital, a tremendous amount of capital allocation. It requires work. Right. And why do work when national media outlets will do the work for you? Right. Then the proverbial shit hit the fan. Correct. On August 12, 2017. And when the proverbial shit hit the fan, guess what happened? And you know this, but I want to educate everybody else. When the proverbial you-know-what hit the fan, the fact that we had no infrastructure in place screwed us and backfired on us. Absolutely. That's the layman's perspective. You're the pro. Talk to me about what I just said there. You're absolutely right, 100%. And so one of my early priorities was, let's get a PR agency on the team. And so we actually got approval for that in our first board meeting. The board was 100% on board, and no pun intended. And we basically we just issued the RFP last month. We received 12 different organizations that are competing for the right to represent Charlottesville and Albemarle County as our PR agency of record. And that will be, through the CACVB. Okay. That we will manage that relationship. Okay. And so, I look at it from a marketing and branding and PR perspective. I kind of look at it as 2 different things. One, you have your ad agency, which we'll get to. Yep. And they represent working on creative, which we'll talk about in terms of advertising spend and social media and content marketing, et cetera. And then you have your PR agency, which is really focused on earned media, right? And getting the positive stories out there and developing relationships with journalists, et cetera, that frankly, we need to change the narrative here, and we need to get back to showcasing what is so incredible about our community.
And so that's what the PR agency and those organizations will work together under my supervision and under the CACVB supervision to create a kind of cohesive strategy.
Yeah, totally get it. Totally
strategy.
get it. You share the stream, like the stream. Thank you, Michael Allenby, for sharing this. Thank you, Sarah Hill Buczynski, for sharing this. Share the stream, like the stream. Exposure for Charlottesville is good for everybody that lives in Central Virginia. Clean. Clean's caught a lot of heat, and I think I've generated a lot of that heat. And then I'm seeing the media outlets kind of ride the coattails of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
414 likes on their Facebook page. An organization out of Raleigh, North Carolina that arguably did not have a good feel for the pulse of Charlottesville, Virginia, and what we were going through post 8/12. I asked Mayor Walker on this show, and one thing about Mayor Walker is she is a straight shooter, and she will let us know what is on her mind. And she straight up said, Jerry Miller, if I was on that board, no one in that room would have had the you-know-whats to show me that campaign, because I would have gone bananas.
Right.
Round one of the campaign, I'm going to try to put it in a nutshell without categorizing it too much, but I am going to categorize it. Handful of white people drinking wine at a vineyard that we couldn't really tell which vineyard it was. We couldn't see the real backdrop of these beautiful mountains real well. A lot of heat. CVille Weekly did a story. I believe it was Lisa Providence. Story in the Daily Progress, NBC 29, CBS 19. What happened? What happened with round one?
So let me start by saying that I have been working with Clean for 6 months, and I've been very impressed with their capabilities.
Okay.
Clean was hired prior to my arrival through an RFP process. As any organization that's hired through a government entity, it has to go through a pretty rigid rigorous RFP process.
Request for proposal.
Request for proposal, yes. And Clean won out over 9 other agencies for the contract to represent Charlottesville, Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Okay.
Clean is based in Raleigh, North Carolina, but there were certainly local agencies that applied and submitted proposals for the RFP. Clean just recently won one of the best places to work in North Carolina as a media company. They have represented Travelocity. They have worked with Boone, North Carolina. They've worked with Wilmington, North Carolina. So I understand why they were selected prior to my arrival as the agency of record. They have about 65 employees. They have a range of capabilities. We're talking about media buying, creative.
They're vertically integrated.
Social media. They're totally vertically integrated.
Totally get it.
And they're a member of the largest independent organization of ad agencies in the world.
Okay.
Okay, so they work with John Deere. They work with some other
That's the good
brands
about Clean.
So they were hired prior to my arrival, and I inherited them. And so that was, to your first point, I think that they're doing a solid job, and they have credible chops. Second, I do not feel comfortable taking tourism advice from Mayor Walker. And I'm going to tell you why. Because our mayor, with the pulpit that she has, was on the front page of the New York Times saying Charlottesville is an aesthetically pleasing and beautiful place, but it's an ugly in the soul kind of place. And I'm quoting her verbatim. Now, I didn't vote for Nakia Walker as my mayor because we don't have a directly elected mayor in Charlottesville.
It's a point.
That's another subject.
Yeah.
But as the mayor, I would say to her directly, through the lens of tourism and hospitality, you're not serving this community well. And so in a position of leadership, as she is, I think she needs to take that responsibility on and understand and appreciate that it doesn't help us as a community for our mayor to be out there in the public criticizing the people that live here.
I have no problem with what you just said. Turn that into a sizzle reel right there. Keep going. Why do you use the...
So the city council has 2 of Nakia Walker's colleagues on its board. And so there are Kathy Galvin and Mike Signer. And so just in terms of the chain of command, those are the people on the CACVB board that are focused on tourism and hospitality. I'm happy to meet and engage with Nakia Walker one-on-one.
Sure.
I would be happy and welcome
Has that ever happened?
It has not happened.
Has she tried?
No. But to be fair, neither have I. So I would like, I know that she called me out on the show that she was here, and I encourage having a conversation with her. But I would say that when we sit down and have that conversation, it's going to be two-way. And what's important for our elected officials to do is to not just talk, but to listen. right? And
Dude,
so
you're killing it right now.
I think there's a lot of things that I would be able to chat with Nakai. And by the way, she makes some excellent points. And again, I have a lot of respect for our elected officials, and I appreciate the public service that they do. But I think she was quoted on your show as saying, "I don't care about business. I don't care about Thomas Jefferson." And again, I got to say, I do care about business because we have 6,000 people who are employed in the city and the county in the tourism industry. We have $375 million of expenditures last year that were spent in the tourism and hospitality industry. So if we're talking about social justice, if we're talking about quality of life, then absolutely tourism is a big part of that conversation, and it has to do with jobs, and it has to do with economic growth and development. And so we need to appreciate that fact. And I hope that our mayor and the rest of the city council can appreciate the importance of tourism.
Well articulated, Adam Healey. That's the end of the highlight reel right there, okay? The starting point to the end point. What I'd like for you to do, Judah, because we're having a fantastic conversation, Judah Wickhauer is behind the board making us look good. Let's rotate the slides through the show, give them roughly 15 seconds each, and let's just slide through so people can get some background. I would then want Adam's face on the screen here because the guy's on point and he's on fire right now. A lot of folks say, okay? I talk to folks of all walks of life. Owning an advertising agency is essentially like the purgatory, or excuse me, owning an advertising agency is essentially a confessional for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs come into this building and they tell me the good and the bad of their business. Mm-hmm. And the entrepreneurs and the business leaders, the people that are striking paychecks to keep their team members being able to afford food for their children. I mean, that's what the business owners do. They have told me they think Charlottesville City Council is more focused on social justice than economic growth. I'm going to throw that to you, and I'm also going to piggyback it with this question. I think if Charlottesville, Virginia really wants to see a tough time, let's watch what happens when the economy struggles. That's when Charlottesville, Virginia is really going to be really feeling it. We're in a tough time now. We're talking about parks. We're talking about streets. We're talking about statues and rebranding them, moving them, changing them. I understand. But you add a bad economy to that, and that's when we're going to have a real trouble. Fortunately, we don't have a bad economy. Fortunately, most likely, a large part because of the University of Virginia.
Absolutely.
Our economy is kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's safe to say. Social justice versus economic growth in our most 5 powerful positions in the city of Charlottesville.
I think I definitely agree with the comments that you characterized by other people that you interact with. Economic growth is important. But at the same time, we want it to be inclusive economic growth that actually lifts up all people. So affordable housing is an important issue. Certainly, I'm not particularly educated in it, so I don't want to comment in detail on it.
Yeah.
But I know that when you have a strong economy, like you describe, and we have a lower unemployment rate than almost
nationwide.
Anywhere, yeah, absolutely incredible figures. That's going to affect everyone that lives here. So we're actually doing pretty darn well,
considering.
Yeah, and
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we can talk about specific tourism numbers in a second, and I have a few slides I'd love to share on that.
And he's putting them on.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just circle back, if I could, on the clean campaign.
Sure.
I'm happy to dive into because we started by saying, what do we do at the CACVB? We do 3 things. We do marketing and branding and PR. And the second thing is we have visitor services, right? So we basically have visitors. We have 2 visitor centers, one downtown Charlottesville, one in Crozet. And people come in and they ask us, hey, this is great. What should I do? What can I do here? And so we have travel specialists, really amazing people that are very knowledgeable about the community that we have here and all of the things that you can do and the ways you can spend money here. And they interact with those guests. We have people writing us about meetings. We have people organizing weddings. We have people organizing events. And so we have a whole infrastructure of people, the travel specialists and our permanent staff that focus on supporting visitor services. And really the third bucket is promoting other programming through tourism grants, interacting with other stakeholder groups, right? So basically community interactions and driving tourism programming. And we can talk more about that as well. There's a lot to talk about there. But the fact is, when I came on the scene, if you think about measuring tourism in a quantifiable fashion and how are we doing as a community, the number one metric that every tourism organization in the country and in the world looks at is something called RevPAR, revenue per available hotel room. And the reason we look at that metric is that we get it on a monthly basis. It's accurate, it's comprehensive, it's timely. It's not a perfect metric, but if you can get a sense of how many people are basically coming here and staying in hotels based on occupancy times average daily rate, which is how you get to RevPAR, then you can get a sense of how is the tourism industry doing here. Well, unfortunately, we're down 4% in Charlottesville and Albemarle County year over year if we look at, basically any point in time. And we have been trending in that direction for some time. If you look at every other major market in Virginia, they're up 1% to 8%. So I have a slide that I basically share that information with as well. But from a RevPAR perspective,
okay,
great.
we have that on now.
That is a critical metric to look at. And I think we're looking at that's
Which slide do you want?
Yeah, that's an example of a budget, which is under budgeted versus other markets.
Performance?
But yeah, now exactly, we're talking about performance.
Cue up performance, Judah. Performance. Let's start with the first performance slide and keep going. Exactly. Show is yours, Adam.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at that data, we can basically say, oh shit. We're not doing so hot. And so when I came in, I said, well, that's what the data says, so why is that? And, I think it's really three things. We need a more compelling marketing platform. Mm-hmm. We need a PR resource to get us positive earned media. Uh-huh. And we need to increase our budget to be able to spend more money on marketing and PR. So those are basically, that was the data shows that we're not doing so hot. And the other challenge is we have 13 new hotels coming online in the next 3 years, at least. Those are only the ones that we know about. So what that means is it increases the denominator of that statistic, such that we're going to have 1,500 more hotel rooms, which is 35% more hotel inventory in this community in the next 3 years. That means we have to work extra hard
to fill the rooms.
Yeah. Because there are businesses making large investments in hotels in this market because they're betting on us. And it's the CACVB's job to work with those stakeholders to drive economic growth for tourism and hospitality.
Great answer right there. Like the stream, guys. Share this stream. Let's get Charlottesville, Virginia, some positive attention. Adam Healey is the interim director of the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau. We're going through the performance slides here. I want to continue on performance and continue to give you an opportunity to break down anything that we have not covered so far, and then we'll move to the next topic.
Appreciate that. Yeah, so I think, when I talk about my major 4 priorities for the CACVB when I came in, the first was governance, making sure that the right people are sitting at the table. I think we've made some progress with the new Joint Operating Agreement Amendment, which was passed in Albemarle County and is now going to be voted on by the city next week, I believe. When that happens, hopefully it happens, we'll have a few more tourism industry professionals sitting at the table. I'd love to see even more. I'd love to see a majority of the board members be tourism industry professionals, just like it is in Asheville, just like it is in Charleston, just like it is in Boulder, just like it is in Sonoma. But we're moving in the right direction. The second major priority is funding. So we talked about that, but getting a larger budget, which would almost entirely be spent on marketing, right, and advertising. The third major priority that we have is the marketing platform, and we can move into that. That's some sexy stuff, and that's kind of the fun stuff, branding and marketing. And
storyboard time?
The storyboard,
okay.
We can do that. And the fourth priority is really what I would call programming and infrastructure, and that means having more fun stuff to do here, and building out the infrastructure to better support the community and tourism and business actual tourism to the community. So I'll give you two quick examples of what that means. Paul Beyer and Tom Tom Festival, they do an amazing job. I don't think there's anybody in town who's done more for this community in terms of helping the CVille brand and bringing people from outside to Charlottesville than Paul Beyer and the Tom Tom Festival.
Doing great.
They've done an amazing job.
I love it.
And so we want more of that. This is a music town, right? But we don't have our own music festival. And I find that pretty amazing. We have, Nelson County's got some music festivals. So one of my friends, Michael Allenby, who's I think on the stream, I've been talking to him and trying to convince him to bring the Festi, which is going to have its 10th annual.
Well, you're now a partner in the Festi.
I am basically working as an advisor with Michael.
Okay, are you an equity owner?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
But this is an example of programming that can be brought to Charlottesville. This is a music town. We don't have our own music festival. And I was recently in Reykjavik at the Iceland Airwaves Music Festival, which really brings the whole community together because it's a multi-venue event, and there's 10 or 12 official venues throughout Reykjavik. And you can, and people, thousands, tens of thousands of people come into Iceland for this festival every year, and it's an incredible driver of tourism and hospitality. So that's an idea from program perspective. Winter festival. We don't have a winter festival here. I've talked to a lot of people about having a winter festival on the downtown mall. An arts festival, right? So we have a great film festival here. We have the great Festival of the Book. We used to have the Festival of the Photograph, which I'd love to see resurrected. But that's the type of programming that we want more of, because it not just brings people into the community, but it's good quality of life enhancement for the people that live here, right? Those are things that we want to go to.
Yeah.
And the second thing is infrastructure. We don't have the capacity to host a business conference for more than 200 people. We hired recently, actually prior to my arrival, the CACVB board hired an organization called Johnson Consulting Group out of Chicago that did a feasibility study on the impact that putting a convention center would have in Charlottesville and what would it look like from a success perspective.
Well, the convention center, and Ray Cadell says Music Fest in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania is a perfect example. Andre Xavier says CVille Tours offers 13 unique experiences in Charlottesville and over 80 team building experiences all here in town. Right. James Watson, thank you for sharing the stream. Travis Wilburn, share this stream, baby. Come on, Travis, you got so much skin in the game here from a tourist standpoint. Let's get this on your social media, Travis Wilburn. Michael Allenby did it for us. Let me throw this to you. Midweek hotels.
Right.
Midweek hotel bookings.
Yeah.
The hotel, after we've launched this show,
right.
I've had so many general managers of hotels reach out to me
right.
and say, Jerry, what really needs to be focused, we have no problem booking the weekends.
Yeah. Right.
We cannot fill rooms Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Talk to me about midweek bookings, and then talk to me how a convention center that can attract major corporations to have team building experiences, that can have training experiences, whatever it may be. The convention center seems to be a natural springboard to me for midweek hotel bookings. Show is yours. Show is yours.
You're absolutely right. You nailed it. I don't think that there's anything we're looking at the CACVB level right now that will have a bigger impact on tourism economic growth and midweek hotel bookings than putting a conference center in Charlottesville.
Where would it go? That's the problem.
If you talk to people like Charles Johnson of Johnson Consulting Group, who do this for a living, or Eric Terry, who runs the Virginia Restaurant Lodging and Tourism Association, who does this for a living, they say you should put the conference center as close to walkable downtown attractions as possible.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that. They're saying that.
Well, it's a no-brainer. It's common sense.
There's best practices data that you can look at and see that if you do that, you're going to have a more successful convention center. People are actually going to want to go there because they want to walk. They want to be able to walk to restaurants. They want to be able to walk to attractions.
And then they're going to spend their money, whether it's their own money or whether it's covered as a business expense by their company, which would be even better because when we have our companies covering our expenses, we spend more money. And then the money, the disposable income stays in the city of Charlottesville. It creates this ridiculous snowball effect where everybody benefits.
Absolutely.
My concern is, Adam, is I look at Charlottesville city limits and I see a a landlocked city that has no room for growth or expansion. Perhaps that's why the urban ring, perhaps that's why Albemarle County, Louisa County, Orange County, Nelson County, Fluvanna County, the property values out there are going big. Ooh, Michael Allenby jumping on board, giving us some good answers. And M.A., Michael Allenby, I see you thinking here, baby. He says, how about the convention center on Water Street where Keith Woodard's old West 2nd apartment complex? I mean, that's city-owned.
Right.
And that's downtown.
Absolutely.
And that could be people walking to and fro the mall. Your thoughts, Adam Healey?
I am in favor of a convention center in downtown Charlottesville. I think it's going to have a major impact on driving midweek hotel occupancy. I mean, the conclusions of the feasibility study was this is a no-brainer for our community. This is a slam dunk. We had Charles Johnson, we flew him into our last board meeting, and he summarized the results of his findings, and he said, this is a slam dunk. And he doesn't have any skin in the game. He was already paid for his work.
Right.
And he's doing an evaluation. He does these all over the country, all over the world for all different places. And if you look at the metrics and you look at the fact that we're smack in the middle of the state of Virginia, the air coverage that we have at the airport wouldn't necessarily mean that we're getting these massive shows because the reliability of the air cover isn't what we want it to be yet, but it's getting better, and I love the Charlottesville Airport, and I'm really pleased to see what they're doing, and they're a really well-run organization, and I think they're doing great, and the runway extension has gotten us, it's fantastic. But what we will get is we will get in-state conventions, and what we will get is up to 1,000 people during the midweek conference center, and the numbers that they've run forecast that this would basically be, if you look out 5 years, a net positive that the city and the county would only need to subsidize the operations to the tune of $250,000 a year. But in return, the increased tax revenue you're going to get from meals tax, from room tax, the TOT, from the lodging tax, the sales tax that you get on retail, and the job creation that you're going to get from having a convention center here that can accommodate up to 1,000 meetings of 1,000 people. They're talking about a 50,000 square foot facility. I'm not sure if the Water Street location would facilitate the size that we need.
I want to jump in here. Travis says West 2nd was going to be a conference center since it had to be used in Saturdays for the farmers market. So perhaps that was something that was integrated in the concept. It was Keith Woodard walked away from $1.2 million.
Well, I don't know if Keith Woodard wanted to walk away.
Oh, no. He said he couldn't deal with city council.
I think that...
He straight up said it wasn't worth his time. Can you imagine when someone says $1.2 million in 2 years of my opportunity cost of my time?
Yeah.
And I don't forget it.
Well, he's doing well. He's done well
he
for
ain't
himself.
Hurting. I'm just saying, but that puts it in perspective of maybe how difficult it is to deal with council.
We have an anti-business city council today.
It's hard to argue with that. Hard to argue with that. Guys, jump in here. A lot of people on the stream. Thank you, Steve Lewis Warner, for sharing the stream. Guys, share this stream right now. Please share it on your Facebook page. Like the page. Like the post. You're doing really well. I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate you willing. You said some ballsy stuff so far.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
You've got great energy, and it's easy to be here and share.
Ann Malik, Board of Supervisors. She says straight up in the press, I'm looking at the first round of the campaign, and the second round of the campaign is here. We will show it to you shortly. He was kind enough to bring the storyboards with us. She straight up says, where's Albemarle County? Like, where's Albemarle County in this? She feels Albemarle County should be in the mix. I'm going to throw my perspective. You give me yours. My perspective is this, okay? If you live in Albemarle County and you're not in, say, a 50-mile radius of Charlottesville, you don't tell people I'm from Albemarle County, Virginia. You tell people I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. If you're in Fluvanna and you're not within a 50-mile radius of Charlottesville, Virginia, you're probably telling people I live right outside Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yep.
Not I'm from Fluvanna County.
Right.
It just makes common sense to me from a brand, and maybe I have more sophistication than the average Joe here. Maybe Ann Malik is an average Joe. Maybe not. Okay. Why build a campaign around a municipality that no one knows outside of a 50-mile radius of Charlottesville, Virginia? Your thoughts, Adam Healey?
I agree with you. I think that Albemarle County is very heavily represented in the work that the CACVB is doing today and has done historically. In fact, if anything, I think a majority of what we're promoting is technically in Albemarle County.
The vineyards, the breweries, the wineries.
Absolutely. The reality of the situation is when a tourist, comes to Charlottesville to spend money, they don't have any awareness of the political boundaries that exist between Charlottesville and Albemarle County.
Agreed.
Also, the state of Virginia is unique in that we have a separate municipality for the city. Now, do you know where Buncombe County is?
No.
Exactly. Buncombe County is where Asheville, North Carolina is.
There you go. Good point right there. You had that one ready right there, Adam Healey.
So
I love it.
No one's saying, I want to go to Buncombe County. And that's why they're not saying, I want to go to Albemarle County. It doesn't mean that we don't love Albemarle County.
It's a strategy.
It's just marketing.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge when you have elected officials who have constituents who are focused on being seen by their constituents as properly safeguarding their constituents' interests. But here's where I think is the missing piece. Everyone benefits when tourism grows to this community because you're going to maybe stay in a hotel in Charlottesville. Maybe your hotel is up 29 in Albemarle County. Who cares?
And then maybe you get on a hop-on tours outside
get on a
Notch
hop-on
and you
tour,
patronize King Family Vineyards.
And you go to King Family and
Blue
Veritas
Mountain.
and Pollock,
Yeah.
or Blue Mountain Brewery, or all the amazing thing, which is actually in Nelson County. But who cares?
Right?
The people are coming here, they're having an amazing time, and what we do have here is this incredible combination of the urbanness of the downtown mall and the corner, but extended to the beautiful countryside, the vineyards and valleys of Albemarle County. And so actually we've addressed that in this current campaign. And you are a leader on this, Jerry, but really CVille, the moniker, the sort of, as Kathy Galvin has referred to it, it's an endearing moniker, CVille.
Yeah.
It represents everywhere from the downtown mall to the vineyards and valleys and the mountaintops of Albemarle County. So the concept around the campaign, talks about CVille as one of its founding principles, and we can start to segue into the branding and marketing stuff.
Oh man, I have so many more questions though.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and people do here.
Okay.
James Watson says Staples will probably be obsolete or go out of business in the next 3 to 5 years due to the internet. How about a convention center on the Staples site, redevelop that area? We clearly see it struggling, and it's close to downtown mall. James Watson, on point per usual. Bob Shada, he says, get the city and county to allow him, get the city and the county to allow Bob Shada to use McIntyre Park to build a huge athletic field complex, and we could be a huge host of lacrosse, baseball, soccer, and softball tournaments. Huge revenue. It could also moonlight as a convention center. Thank you, Bob Shotto. Sure. I like that. Sam Filippo, thank you for sharing the stream. Steve Lewis Warner, you shared the stream. Share the stream and get Charlottesville, Virginia in the spotlight. This dude is kind enough to give us his time and give us the insight, the strategy, what is happening at the CACVB. George Collier, I see you joining us here. Thank you, my friend, for jumping on board. A couple more questions for you, and then we're going to get into the artwork, okay? Mm-hmm. Albemarle County, when the city of Charlottesville is strong, Albemarle County is strong. When Albemarle County is strong, Louisa, Orange, Nelson, Greene, et cetera, they're strong. A lot of the people that we see every day, because we're downtown every day, are straight up telling me our customer numbers are down downtown. Yeah. For some reason, there's people that are on social media that are saying, boycott Charlottesville, which makes no sense to me, because these are the same people that live in the counties that rely on Charlottesville to drive home value for their most prized investment, which is their home. Right. Downtown, what can be done? How do we help these guys?
One of the first things that we did, that I did actually with Clean, the agency, was we had the anniversary of the August 12th events coming up last year. Mm-hmm. And I asked them to put together a campaign to be a counterpoint, to be an alternative storyline to the fact that Charlottesville was going to be in the media again because Jason Kessler was trying to have his white supremacist rally in Charlottesville for the second year. And as we all know, he ended up having to push that up to D.C. So I tasked Clean with putting a campaign together, and we put the Joined in Strength campaign together, and you've probably seen.
Oh yeah, the hand.
The hand. So, and there's actually two hands clasped together, and we had an incredible response to that. That was done on an incredibly small budget in an incredibly short period of time. We had Dave Matthews participate in the campaign, and he was photographed with the joint and strength button. And Travis Wilburn actually was kind enough to help us put a banner on the downtown mall on his building. And we had posters put together. We had street teams in both Charlottesville and Washington, D.C. And the whole concept was, this is a solidarity campaign. Charlottesville stands with the people of Washington, D.C. And it really blew up. It was a huge success from a social media perspective.
Yeah.
It got a lot of traction. And frankly, that was my first opportunity to work with the folks at Clean, and they did a tremendous job. They came up here many times, and we talk about not working with an out-of-town ad agency, but if you look at Asheville, they work with an agency out of New Orleans.
Okay. So you're saying it's the standard?
It's the standard.
Okay.
And the reason is I love to buy local.
I know you do.
I buy all my food local.
Yeah. Your beer?
Beer.
Yeah.
Wolf Creek Farms is my favorite. If you want to fillet, go John Whiteside at the farmer's market. I can talk to him. I've been to his farm. I've ridden on his tractor, and the cows are so healthy, and I love buying it. There's an environmental benefit to buying local. But when you're talking about professional services, you need to go where the best skills are. Okay. And we're not incurring an increased environmental cost to hiring an agency that's out of market. And the fact is, we opened up the RFP to local agencies, but this Raleigh based agency won. Now, they're under contract through next summer. So I think we don't even need to talk about whether they're not they're the agency of record right now, but the CACVB board will evaluate their performance and have an opportunity to renew their contract or to open it up as they see fit.
I want to contribute the wall right outside on my building here.
Okay.
It's a huge wall, 10,000 cars, 10 to 15,000 cars drive by every day.
Okay.
Do whatever you want with that wall.
Wow. That's
okay?
generous.
Right outside.
Appreciate it.
Okay, as long as obviously it's going to be positive Charlottesville.
Absolutely.
Whatever you want with that wall, let's put a campaign on there. Ahmad Hawkins, thank you for joining us on the stream. You're on fire right now, dude. Ray Cadell, thank you for sharing the stream. Like and share the stream. Positive spotlight on Charlottesville, Virginia. So many more questions I have for you. One of the ideas that came up on the show was the crowdfunding idea of using the talent, the sweat equity, the human capital, the people that bleed Charlottesville in Central Virginia, to put a strategy, campaign, designs, artwork, whatever it may be, dangle a prize like 10 Gs, and that 10 Gs gets people involved in submitting ideas. We can turn it into a contest. The contest itself would be positive and generating. And then the result, why not something like that?
Definitely within the realm of possibility. Right now, I'm trying to get a new marketing platform in place. There's been a lot of work that's put into really the brand strategy framework that goes before the advertising campaign. So if we think about Charlottesville, we have to look at ourselves as a product vis-a-vis our competitive landscape. And you're very familiar with positioning, as you know, I've heard you talk about it on the show. So who are we competing against? We're competing against Richmond.
Yes.
We're competing against Roanoke.
We're competing against Asheville.
We're competing against Asheville to an extent. We're competing against Virginia Beach. We're competing at West Virginia.
Nashville.
Williamsburg, Virginia. So we have to look at ourselves through that lens and say, what is it that we are uniquely well served to provide? What kind of experience? And the fact is, when people come here, they typically will go either engage in the history that we have, the three presidents, right? Monticello, Montpelier, Ashland, Highland. They will go wine tasting. We've got probably the best wine region on the entire East Coast, probably outside of California, Oregon, and Washington. We've got the best wine region in the country. So I'd like to plant a flag in the ground, and one of the things that we've talked about is putting a wine center in Charlottesville, Albemarle, and saying we'll start by saying we're the capital of wine in the state of Virginia.
Okay.
Everyone who knows wine knows that we have the best wines. We get the most medals, the Governor's Cup. We have the best wine in the state. So the wine board of the state needs a home, and we need to provide that home for them. And there's potentially some synergies here with the wine center and the conference center to think through. But the fact is, we have the first winemaker of the United States in Thomas Jefferson lived up the road.
One of the oldest ones in maybe the United States, in Barbersville.
Absolutely.
Vineyards right around the
fantastic,
corner.
Fantastic Italian winemaker. So we there's an opportunity there. But what we have to understand what we are uniquely suited, and that's a big piece of it. Wine and farm to table food. I'd love to see us do a food and wine festival comparable to what Aspen does. We have way more claim to putting on an event like that than, frankly, Aspen does. So we have to know what we're uniquely suited at. And the fact is, when we go through the research and when we interview people, we find out that the people that come here are coming here to live a kind of quality of life. They're going to visit Monticello. They're going wine tasting. They're eating in our amazing restaurants.
Spending money.
Alley Light and Brasserie Saison, and we got a new place, Little Star, that just opened up.
The Oakhurst guys.
Yeah, we've got great food, farm to table thing here. We've got a great music scene here, right? So you put all that together, and we figured out we need to target 25 to 44-year-old refined roamers, people that are like, hey, let's go have a good time in Charlottesville. Let's just book a hotel for a few nights. Let's stay at the Oakhurst Inn, and let's go wine tasting.
Some of our city councilors would say if we target 25 to 44-year-olds with disposable income that are willing to travel to and from Charlottesville to have fun drinking wine, drinking beer, and eating food, that is not a diverse or an inclusive demographic.
Well, I think that
you hear that, right?
The fact remains twofold. One is maybe so, but again, we have an economic incentive. And by the way, I think it's almost it's pretty close-minded to assume that African Americans don't enjoy wine. Like, why are we? Or is that implied in that statement? I mean, we're not saying don't come here. We're saying come here. And the campaign reflects that. I'm sorry, but we will see that. Secondly, when you talk about who we're targeting, for the next 6 months we have a $200,000 media budget. That's nothing.
That's nothing.
We have to be focused in who we're targeting.
25 clients that have a deeper media budget.
Absolutely.
Than the city of
My last startup had a way bigger marketing budget
that's
than
so
that.
horrifying.
So the reality is that's why we need to expand the budget. If you want to have a more diverse marketing campaign and you want to target different demographic or psychographic segments, I'm all for it. I want to go after people in Chicago and people in New York and people in Atlanta, places that are direct flight from Charlottesville. We need to be doing that. We need the budget to be able to invest in those media markets, which are significantly more expensive. What we have now, with the resources that we have now, we can target 25 to 44-year-old refined roamers in Washington, D.C. If you double the size of the budget, now we can go to Research Triangle Park. We can go to New York. We can go to Chicago. We can go to Atlanta. If you quadruple the size of the budget, now we can get television spots, right? We can invest in really high quality production value for like a 4-minute video. We can start to do more, but it takes money.
You are basically saying you're doing the best you can with what you got.
To drive real impact so that the restaurants here, that the hotels here, that the attractions here, that the transportation companies here see a lift. And that lift will be reflected in the RevPAR numbers that we look at every month. People
giving you props right now, Healey. Couple ideas right here. James Watson says, is there any talk of one day hosting a round of the men's NCAA basketball tournament?
I love that.
Raleigh, Greensboro, do it. Let's guarantee to bring in thousands of people for local businesses. They'll stay 4 to 5 days. They'll drink, they'll party, they'll eat at restaurants. James Watson and Fuego, per usual. Thank you so much. Steve Lewis Warner, Heritage Theater Festival and other summer festivals. We need things like this. My phone is freaking blowing up right now. Andre Xavier, we have to market to corporate businesses, attending professional trade shows. We need trade shows and corporate businesses to drive midweek hotels. We all know this. Very good point, Andre. Corbin Snow shared the feed. April Dent Ward shared the feed. Like the feed, share the feed. This is good for your business. This is good for your home value. Positivity for the city of Charlottesville. We have storyboards that we're going to get to. You are crushing. I need to ask you about Welcome Center. Okay. We've talked briefly about a welcome center. We talked briefly about a convention center. The current City of Charlottesville Welcome Center is buried in a bus station.
I know.
And this wasn't your doing. This is what you inherited.
Correct.
The current Charlottesville Welcome Center, I'm going to cut to the chase. Okay. The current Charlottesville Welcome Center is the antithesis of a welcome center. I see 4 to 5 homeless folks, some of them intoxicated and antagonistic, standing outside the Welcome Center. Oftentimes, the Welcome Center is staffed by an entry-level hourly employee that is asked to do a number of other things, or a retired person, okay? What the heck is going on with the Welcome Center? The second part is, why not return, Andre Xavier made this point, why not bring the kiosk that was once downtown dead center by Central Place? Why not bring the kiosk back so the marketplace, tourism, or locals can interface in a much more approachable welcome center?
I love that idea. I love that idea, and I'm going to bring it to the next board meeting. It's a fantastic idea. First of all, the visitor center is above the bus station, probably because there was a sweetheart deal on rent that was given to the city. I don't know what the terms are, but I do know that in the joint operating agreement between the city and the county, it's mandated that there be a visitor center both in the city and the county. I'd love to see us build a new visitor center, potentially at the Wine Center, where it's right off of the highway. It's convenient and easy to get to, and you show up at that visitor center, and you have a permanent tasting room there, and you have every single wine and that's available on draft for visitors, and that becomes a part of the welcome experience, and let's build it from scratch. We've got great architects in town, and if it was located where I want to locate it, which would be relatively close to Monticello, then you could run buses straight up to Monticello. You could run buses straight to the vineyards and make sure that we're getting people to the vineyards to go on their wine excursions and to other attractions in the community. So I think that that's been discussed very early stages at the CACVB board level, and I think that there's a lot of positive energy around that concept, which is the wine center, which would be the new visitor center. And I agree that the visitor center could use a refresh. What I don't agree with is the travel specialists that we have are really top notch. I mean, we're talking about people that they day in and day out, they're interacting with people that are coming here. All the travel specialists that man the desks are really experts at what there is to do here. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And I think that certainly we can continue to invest in training and making sure that we stay current, but they're passionate about what they do. They're people. And, we always get really high marks from visitors based on the interactions that they have with the travel specialists.
Okay, we will agree to disagree on that point. I want to thank Mark Lickman for joining us on the feed, Catherine Leckler for joining us on the feed. Like it and share it. Let's give Charlottesville some love. We'll play a little devil's advocate for the sake of this program here, baby. Let me throw this to you here. Okay. When I bought this storefront, I initially put a welcome center here. The concept was welcome center because you know why? I'm an entrepreneur, and I saw a hole in the market, and I saw that the current Welcome Center was, I didn't think, up to par. When my wife and I went on our honeymoon to Kauai and to Maui, we were using these Welcome Centers. They were so dynamic and interactive and offered so much like this robust experience that then showed us what we should do in Maui and Kauai. Right. Because we're two average Joes from Charlottesville. We don't know about these places. Yeah. And I came back from this honeymoon, and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm going to do here. And the storefront. Admin offices upstairs, corporate offices upstairs. This was our way to interact with the market. This is what I quickly realized. And this is why I pivoted and changed the model. A welcome center is brutal to staff. Why you need a welcome, you're working on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. No one on my team put their hand up in the air and said, I want to work the Thursday and Saturday night shift at 10 p.m. Yeah. And then I realized I'm either going to need a ton more staff, or I'm going to have to say, get out of the company, guys. I need some fresh blood in here, and I didn't want to do that. Right. So we pivoted and turned it into a studio because the whole point of me with having the Welcome Center is I wanted to interface with the market with my brand. I'm doing this in spades with a show like this. Yep. Where I'm going with this is...
You moved it online.
Yeah. Where the people already are. Yeah. Yeah, where more are.
Yeah.
I get it. You totally get it. Here's where I'm going with this is the kiosks on the mall. The visitor center or the welcome center, whatever it's called in Crozet. I understand why it's in Crozet because that's kind of like the epicenter of Albemarle County, Crozet. Is there a way? I loved your idea of having wine and beer on tap because when someone comes in, it's a tourist, they're like, man, I really love this Minuteman. This is one of the best beers I ever.
And by the way, you're going to be able to buy a bottle, or you're going to buy a case,
or walk
and
to the brewery,
walk out of it, or just go straight. Yeah, I mean, we can. It's going to be a retail.
Keep talking to me about this. This is brilliant, Adam.
Well, it's not my idea. I can't take credit for it. I just came across it. There was a feasibility study by the county, done by the county prior to my arrival. Actually, it was back in 2013. About the feasibility of putting a wine center here. And I think it's a phenomenal idea, and there's been a ton of positive energy around it. So, the reality is we got to take it from concept to reality, and we're going to need to work with other constituents, such as those in Richmond, those in D.C., to make that happen. We had the support of a previous governor who was a big wine fan, and then unfortunately, that didn't work out.
What do you mean?
For various reasons, because that governor.
Oh, Bob. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Bob McDonald. Sorry.
But I think that we need to plant a flag in the ground, as this community does, and say, hey, we're the best wine region in the state. Everybody knows it. So boom, here's the wine center. And let's make that. It's a big part of why people come here, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And you can combine it with a direct connection to Monticello, a direct connection to UVA. The visitor center can be there, and the historical. So I would love to see us build from scratch a brand new visitor center with real dollars behind it.
We're going to go to the storyboards. Is it round 2 campaign?
Yeah. So
okay,
I
got a couple more questions for you. A couple more questions. I can't wait to show everybody the storyboards here. Tough questions here.
Great.
I sent them to you, so you're prepped for them. How much is Clean making? How much are we paying Clean, the advertising agency in Raleigh?
Yeah, they make the same amount that. So when they signed up to when you submit a proposal for the RFP, you have to indicate what your fees are, and price is a considerable component to winning an RFP. We pay them we pay in total about $16,000 a month. Okay. I would say half of that is in terms of fees that actually goes to the agency, and the other half is in terms of investing in advertising,
media
spend.
placement.
And so it's really 3 components. Okay. It's the work that they're doing, the human work. It's media placement, advertising placement, and then it's the production of that media. So if we're producing a video,
they outsource it.
They work with subcontractors, and as much as possible work with local subcontractors. One of the cool things that they came up with that we're working on now are called nickel tours. And Ann Malick referenced this in her recent NBC 29 clip. And these are really short, basically the idea is that they're 5 seconds, but they're longer than 5 seconds. Clips that feature local businesses, whether they're restaurants or vineyards or attractions, or accommodations, and we start with a spinning nickel, of which Thomas Jefferson is on the front and Monticello is on the back, and then we have the sort of fast clip nickel tour. Like in a snapshot of 10 seconds, you can get a sense of the business, and then it ends with the nickel spinning. And we're gonna make a ton of these. They're super social media friendly. Yeah. We can be very inclusive about who's featured in a nickel tour, and we're gonna throw them up on our website. And we're redesigning our website right now. We're just kicking that off. But in the meantime, we'll have a landing page which features these nickel tours. They're really what's great is, as you know this better than anyone because you're a pro at social media. That's the type of bite-sized content that works really well on Instagram,
it's shareable,
and Facebook. It's super shareable. And that's the kind of thing that but there's a lot of work that goes into. You got to reach out to the organizations. You've got to schedule time to come shoot. You got multiple people. You've got creative people. You've got production people. You got sound people, engineers. So all of those people involved in producing this stuff.
Tough question. You had it in advance. How about you? Your compensation.
What about me? I am compensated comparably to other leaders in our government. So if you look at the compensation for the city manager, or the county executive.
Can you give me a number?
It's kind of uncouth to say the number, but it's publicly. I'm sure it's public. I'm sure it's public somewhere. I don't want to be the person that says it, but I'll say I'm compensated.
So Mo Jones's $250,000 salary.
Less than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. I won't push any further. That's fair, right? Did I handle that fairly?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want you to think that I'm not gotcha or trying to.
And by the way, Maurice Jones getting $225,000 a year to manage a $165 million budget. In my mind,
you thought it was fair?
Totally reasonable.
Yeah. How about the loan forgiveness?
Great. didn't we ask him or didn't we support him in going to get an MBA?
Well, the loan forgiveness was he was living in Albemarle County and had to move to the city of Charlottesville. He's the city of Charlottesville manager.
Right.
And the city of Charlottesville gave him the 20% down payment.
Okay.
And then he never had to pay that back.
Okay.
And then
it's a benefit. It's education. I mean,
and they also paid for his MBA. Yeah, which is
Right.
fine. I have no beef with that. All right, I cannot. How about the CACVB funded? How is it funded? The annual budget. You've already talked about this already.
Yep.
Let's do it again in a nutshell, and then we will get to the artwork. And then the second part of that question is, what other things are the CACVB doing to increase tourism? You've covered that really well, so we don't have to get into that. Just talk to me about the CACVB funding, the annual budget. I know it's coming from taxes. We've covered this. Just
Yep, it
something
comes
that
from-
we can put in a nutshell for a clip.
yeah, the CACVB is funded entirely by generating tourism occupancy tax revenue paid by visitors staying in our hotels. We collect a 5% tax in the county and a 7% tax in the city, the first 30% of which stays in tourism, and the remainder of which, the first 30% of the first 5%, stays in tourism, and the remainder of which goes into the general fund. So not a dollar is paid by taxpayers in Charlottesville, Albemarle County. It's just not paid by taxpayers. The money comes from visitors that are staying in hotels. And that's why there's always this little bit of a give and take between the elected officials who are like, this is our tax revenue, and the industry, hoteliers and others who are saying, actually, we're collecting the tax on your behalf from our guests, but it's not being paid for by taxpayers. It's being paid by visitors. So again, I'd love to say a plug. So it was $1.8 million last year. The number is automatically calculated based on what the TOT is of the previous year. And it'll go up. It goes up every year. We have a slide. We had a slide on that. It goes up, let's say, $100,000 each year. As more hotels are built and we collect more TOT, then the budget will go up for but I'd like to see us really keep 100% of the TOT in tourism. Today we only keep collectively about 20%.
Good answer right there, and that's a digestible, approachable answer that we can turn into a sizzle reel, Judah. Let's make that a highlight reel, please. I appreciate your transparency. I really am impressed. This is what I like to do after you write down the times there, Wickhauer. I'm about to pull out the artwork. Which one should I start with first? This one?
Yeah, so I'd love to start by showing the first campaign that we put together, and that's these first two things. So, unfortunately, the CVille Weekly or the Daily Progress, I don't know what it was, but basically they pulled one of these and didn't showcase all of them. So, really up top here, the concept is around CVille. And the fact is that there's a play of words on CVille, civilize, civilization. But we know that we're attracting a sophisticated audience. So at the top here, you get a civilized view of the world. We're highlighting the incredible outdoor amenities that we have here. All of these photos are for placement only, so this is not a finalized campaign. This is a work in progress. But you can see that on the top here.
Let me get you here in the middle,
Yeah.
so we can get you on camera. And I know you need to see what we're talking about
here.
here.
The top one is get a civilized view of the world, and showcasing our incredible national park that we have 30 minutes from here. The bottom, we're focusing on the farm-to-table, incredible farm-to-table scene that we have here in Charlottesville, Albemarle County. In civilization, you know where your food comes from. And here you have a ethnically diverse family that's featured in the photo. You can go ahead. Let's look at the second one.
All right. Second one here.
Yeah. So
I'll take that from here, and you can you can run the show here.
yeah. So here you have again two different visual versions of the same concept, but we're focusing in civilization. We offer 5-star dining on 4 wheels. And then in civilization, you know where your food comes from, which is a different photo. But you can see that we're focusing on an inclusive image, and it's hip, it's sophisticated. We've tested this with 25 to 44-year-old refined roamers. They love this campaign. They love this. Think about you're in Washington, D.C., you're slaving away every day in traffic, you're driving to and from work, and then you see this, and you realize it's 2 hours south. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's just go down there for the weekend and a couple nights and hang out. Is there stuff on the other side here?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's flip it around.
Okay, I'll flip it around. You're a play-by-play guy, too.
Thanks. So civilized dining doesn't always involve more than one fork. You have an older couple. What I asked Clean to do here was show us that this campaign can scale to other psychographic segments, and it does. But we wouldn't necessarily go out of the gate with this incarnation of the campaign. If we increase the size of our advertising budget, we can, right? Down here, civilians know how to relax and have a good time. Come experience the civilian life in Charlottesville. So people, this is cool, this is hip, it's sophisticated, but we're not saying we're sophisticated, but we know that the audience members that we're targeting have a higher disposable income and appreciate the finer things: food, wine, history, outdoors, music, and those are the people that we're going after. And Jerry, just to conclude with that, and then we can go to the other slides, is when you're the last one that we didn't look, this one. Yeah, thank you.
Live TV at its best. Thank you, Adam, for working with us. I appreciate you, sir.
Oh, of course, I appreciate you giving us this opportunity. Basically, if you want to be successful in branding, you need to create an emotion in the audience's mind. What is the emotion that we want to connote with the people that are seeing this stuff? And I think that this stuff does that really pretty well. So now what you have here is a second version of the same campaign. Doesn't quite hit the incredibly controversial concept of civilization. And now it just says, in CVille, the farm is never far from the table. And enjoy 5-star dining on 4 wheels in CVille. And one of the things that modified here as well, as you can see, is there's so much to see, is the tagline here. There's so much to see, apostrophe. And that's a play on CVille. And then you can see that Albemarle is more prominently featured in the logo design. And I think that comes across and is a nice balance here. So there's one more on the other side that focuses on the amazing music industry that we have here. Live is the only way to experience CVille, and you can see 2 people, enjoying a live show here. And so again, the idea is really with the advertising campaign that yes, there's lots of things you can do here, but ultimately we want to create an emotional connection with the audience that's seeing this advertisement. And these ads have played really well. And so what we're doing now is I've asked the agency to put together a proper analysis of basically roundtable testing the 2 different ad campaigns. One is more civilization focused, which we also actually have a video of that I can share with you later. And one of them is a little bit more toned down, focusing on CVille. The last thing I would say is what I think we did get consensus on amongst the people in the room, even though there was a lot of positivity around this campaign that wasn't accurately reflected in the articles that were published, is that CVille as a moniker, if you will, an endearing moniker for the region, works.
I love that idea.
And you know it well.
Keep doing that.
So, that I think is where we solve the challenge of the fact that we have 2 municipalities that are sitting at the table.
Sarah Hill-Buczynski giving you some props. She's an entrepreneur. She says, these ads aren't supposed to be for us Charlottesville residents. We already know it's a great place. These ads are for the target audience of tourists to drive money to the community.
That's absolutely true.
Please respond to that.
I mean, she's right 100%. And I think that the challenge of having all the elected officials at the table or are that they are looking at it through a slightly different lens. But if you're an entrepreneur and you understand, you're marketing to a specific audience and you're not trying to market to everybody, you can't be everything to everybody. Right. You have to.
I struggle with that every day.
Yeah, you have to decide who your really your audience is. And with the resources that we have, we came up with 25 to 44-year-old, and there's a lot of research that was done to kind of come up with that. It wasn't just like plucked out of thin air, and that's what good marketing is. It's based on strategy and data, and I think that Clean basically took us from start to finish with the strategy all the way through to implementation here. Now, with a bigger budget, as I said, I'd love to expand the psychographic segments that we're targeting with a similar campaign, and I'd love to be in Chicago and New York and Atlanta,
key markets,
and Charlotte, and the Research Triangle Park, and absolutely, and we need more money.
Good answer.
More money.
More money, more money. Okay, let me throw this to you, okay? And we're gonna close down. You've given us 90 minutes of your time.
Wow.
It's your most precious commodity. I'm truly grateful.
Appreciate it.
I want to create a sizzle reel, a highlight reel. And the highlight reel I want to create is around how do we return Charlottesville to the happiest city in America,
right.
For the people outside of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
So this will be one of the last questions I ask you. Before I get to that question, so you have some time to think, I'll thank the sponsors. So you can formulate some thoughts. We certainly thank Greenberry's Coffee. We thank Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. We thank Roy Wheeler Realty Company, a trusted legacy brand in Charlottesville. Roy Wheeler Realty Company, guys, with one of the most arduous, one of the most difficult things you can do in life is purchasing or selling a home. Roy Wheeler does it very well. Also, Interstate Pest and Service Companies, 4 generations strong. Interstate Pest and Service Companies, they are a home's best friend. Josephine Humphrey, thank you for joining us. Everyone who shared this, thank you for joining us. Before I ask you that question, I want to give you an opportunity to, did I miss anything? Did I leave anything out? Is there anything else that we should have highlighted in the show that we have not?
I think it was a great opportunity to come and share with you, what we're working on at the CACVB. I do think it's important that people have transparency around what the organization is, how it's funded, how it's governed, what its mission is. And so I'm grateful to you for giving me this platform to share.
Sure thing, homie. No problem. Let me throw this to you. You go dead center here on this for the camera. We're going to put this in front of 250,000 people. This is the camera to interact with.
Okay.
You're the point of contact with having a really hard job. And your hard job is changing the regional and national conversation for Charlottesville, Virginia. I do this for a living. It's hard. Some ways I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. Okay? So I understand where you're coming from. This is the question. How do we return Charlottesville, Virginia to being the happiest city in America from a regional and national level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts with us. And it starts with the people that live here. And we've gone through a lot as a community over the last couple of years. Absolutely. We've been tested. And we're resilient. And we've come out stronger. And I believe that a lot of the conversations that we're having are important conversations. At the end of the day, I believe in the concept that, Bob Marley, One Love. If we really start from a place where we appreciate that we all want the same things, we want to be happy, we want to find meaning in our lives, and we want to enjoy and love the community that we live in. I think we need as a community to get back to the basics. This is an incredible place. I've lived in Boulder, Colorado. I've lived in New York. I've lived in a lot of places. I've visited all the places that we've talked about. But it's true. I keep coming back to Charlottesville. And in a word, it's community. It's the incredible community that we have here. So I think it starts with us and each and every person kind of waking up in the morning and saying, I'm committed to this community, and what can I do to give to this community? And it goes from there. And so, yeah, we have an economic mission at the CACVB, but I really also care about this mostly from a community perspective. And I want to see us collaboratively get back to basics and just appreciating each other and appreciating that we all care about the same things and we all want the same things at the end of the day. We're all human beings, and we want to be loved, we want to be respected, and we want to love our neighbors. And I think Charlottesville, more than any other place I've ever experienced, is that place.
Good answer. Judah, highlight reel, please. Very approachable, very digestible clip right there. I want to thank you. You gave us 94 minutes.
Wow.
Thank you.
Went flying by. Thank you, Jerry. You're excellent at what you do.
Well, thank you. You don't have to say that, but thank you. This guy's a busy man, and he just gave us 94 minutes, and he asked tough questions that not a lot of people would answer. He did not sidestep a single question. He was straightforward in everything. He was transparent in everything. Maybe he's catching some heat that's not deserved. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I think that the CACVB, you guys got a lot of pressure on you to change the regional and national conversation, and It ain't easy. It ain't easy. After spending 95 minutes now with Adam Healey, I feel even more confident that the leadership at CACVB is the right leader in play. Maybe this guy, if we can persuade him somehow to extend that contract and keep going, maybe that's a good decision. Because when you have transition and you have turnover, oftentimes you have to start from scratch with a lot of things. And I just spent 96 minutes with this dude, and I feel like this guy understands it on many, 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 many different levels. Well, let's close the show by asking you to like and share this stream. This is only going to help the brand that is Charlottesville, Virginia. When it's over, when it's all said and done, all we're trying to do is give a positive spotlight on Charlottesville, Virginia. All I care, my entire mission of my business is how can I leave Charlottesville, Virginia in a better place than when I first arrived here in 2000 to attend the University of Virginia. Okay, that's my entire mission. Okay, we're allocating so much human capital and so much money to this mission, but in the long run, I think that's the right play. On Tuesday, Rory Stolzenberg, Planning Commissioner, is going to join us on this show to talk about affordable housing, to talk City Council and the dynamic between Charlottesville City Council and the Planning Commission, to talk about Keith Woodard's project, 80 mil, hasta luego, what the heck? Let's talk about that with Rory Stolzenberg, a Planning Commissioner, on Tuesday. This is the I Love CVille Show. I am Jerry Miller. For Judah Wickower, for Adam Healey, we close the program the same way every time. Charlottesville, Virginia. Please be good to each other. Enjoy your weekend. Keep it local. Keep it local. Keep it local. Bird's eye view. And tell us when we're clear.